Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. I've been a very lucky boy and Games Workshop have kindly sent me a copy of the Maximus Battle Group, so let's take a look inside the box and maybe paint one of the Mark IV.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
It was quite a few years ago now that I started my journey into Horus Heresy with Mark IV Space Marines. Back then they were plastic like these, but a little bit of a different scale, and it's really nice to see these finally updated and brought towards that slightly more modern scale, the more true scale that we've seen in recent years. So again, thank you to Games Workshop for sending these over to me. I was really eager to work on one of the Mark IV, be that one of the Assault Marines or the Tactical Marines. You've got plenty of transfers here. You've got two of the vehicle sheets. Obviously there's a Dreadnought and a Sakaar in here, and you have two of the standard sort of infantry sheets as well. All of the instructions are in separate little booklets, so obviously a couple of them are already existing kits, and then you have your two new kits, and the instructions for those are obviously what's going to be in those individual sets, when no doubt you'll be able to buy them in a few weeks time on their own, maybe a month or two. I can't imagine it'll be too long. All full colour, nice and easy to see. I'm not going to show you the frames at all for the Sakaar and for the Dreadnought. They've been around for a while now. I thought I'd have a real quick look, because I know it takes a little while before the sprue pictures get on the website of the new stuff. So we got the Mark IV Assault Marines with their jetpacks, and we've got the standard Mark IV Marines as well. And I'd give the video a pause if you want to have a closer look. I don't want to linger on them too much. It's a little bit boring just to look at the frames, but they're there if you want to pause and have a little look. But they all look pretty good, well packed on the frame. I decided just to build one at the moment. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with this. I've been working on some Iron Warriors. I don't want to paint these as Iron Warriors, and I really like these new Power Lance miniatures that you get, a different sort of weapon I've had before. So I decided to build one of those, just one of them standard poses rather than the Sergeant or something like that, and paint it up today as part of this video. And I'm going to go with Sons of Horus. I've got a little scheme that I came across accidentally while testing some Kaleido transparent paints, and the video, I'll pop a little link in now. It's very recent, this week if you're watching this at the time of release, and I came up with it just by sort of playing around and testing those clears. But the miniature is all built, ready to go, primed in black, and then the first stage is really quite important for the next of the painting. I'm going to use one of the Kaleido paints that I also reviewed in that same video earlier this week, mostly because I was extremely impressed with how smooth it is, and this is what I really want right now. This is not just a standard zenithal in many ways. I want to make sure that I get all of the light in the places that I really want it. So this is pre-shading, this is underpainting, pre-highlighting, whatever you like to call it. I'm going to make sure that the highlights on the shoulder pads and the arms and the rest of the armour are really strong in places, but leaving plenty of the black, not just in the undercuts but in some of the undersides of panels, so that you've got this zenithal style effect, because I'm going to be airbrushing clears over the top to give me the green. There's going to be no other highlighting with a regular brush on top of that, so I'm spending a little bit more time making sure I get these highlights exactly where I want them. I can't rely on the rest of the painting afterwards. All the highlights that you see me placing now will be very visible through these clear paints that I'm going to be adding afterwards. So that gives you an idea of how much black is still showing underneath at different angles, and you can see where I'm focusing the highlights as well on the miniature. And then these are the two clear paints, transparent paints that I'm using from Kaleido. I'll put all of the paints that I use up on an article on my Patreon. It will be available to free patrons, so you don't have to pay anything to get it. You do have to join my Patreon to do it as a free member. Of course, if you'd like to pay me and support me as well, that's always greatly appreciated. However, you don't want to go anywhere near Patreon, you can just pause this video, because I do hold each of the paints I use up, and you just have to make a note of it yourself. What you'll see I'm doing here is very thin coats of the sort of the turquoise teal blue first, just really lightly building it up. I'm a big fan of the kind of off minty blue green that you get in some Sons of Horus paint jobs. I really quite like the look of that, but I also quite like the sea green look that you get more from the studio paint job, and it seems to have evolved over the years that I've been following Horus Heresy. You used to get a lot more of these lighter greens, and the studio paint job has kind of dragged that back, if that's the right phrase. Probably not, a little bit now. More and more people are following that darker sea green look, and what I'm going to try and achieve here with these two transparent paints is something that kind of has one foot in each camp, so to speak. You could easily use these two colours to do Alpha Legion as well, probably adding more of this colour and less of the green, and maybe even going over a metallic underpaint as well, but that's definitely for another video. With the turquoise colour down, I'm going in with the green colour, which is a quite stark difference in terms of colours. They would normally look quite messy, airbrushing them over the top of each other if they weren't transparent paints, but because they're just adding a filter over the top of what's already there, you get this really nice effect. So what I'm trying to do here is focus in the shadows first, in those darker areas, and blend it out towards the lighter areas, trying to leave much of that light in place. And as I start to put layers down, I can get a little bit more confident to where I want to add the next layers and the next layers. You should note I haven't actually thinned these clear paints at all. They're neat in the airbrush, and I very rarely do that, but by being very careful with them, I'm able to produce these nice thin layers, and this is how impressed I was with these paints that I tried this week. I haven't used clear transparent paints for a while. Since Contrast has come out, I've started using those things instead, but these are really very good, so I recommend taking a look at them if you like painting in this way. And if you're a Heresy fan, I think there'll be lots of options for clear coats and candy coats that these might well do the job for you. And that's essentially what we end up with. So it looked very highlighted in certain places, a real mix between the green and the teal blue. Next up, I'm just grabbing some Grim Black speed paint. I'm using that to paint in all of the little bits between the armor plates, the sort of the rubber areas. And by using this, it gives you a little bit of a highlight because of painting over a slightly lighter color underneath. I do go back and do a little bit of gray highlighting on them afterwards, and I also glaze back with this Grim Black again. You could use a flat black paint here and then highlight up. It doesn't make an awful lot of difference. I just tend to use these paints where I can. I like the way they flow into the miniature. Now I'm moving on to some metallics, and I won't shout out all the colours and the names. Again, pause the video or look at that Patreon post. I'm starting with a very dark metallic paint here, almost black. There's not an awful lot to colour here, so I'm going with the cross belts and the little bit that holds them together in the center of the chest, and then a few other areas like the spear itself, all the metallic areas on there, and then backs of the jetpack itself. I'm going to add those in this same metallic color. After that, it's all about layering up. We moved more to a sort of mid-tone steel color. Really love this paint, and I'm just layering up the highlights, to be honest with you, focusing on the top part of that central piece, giving a nice neat line down the top straps there, not worrying about the under ones too much, almost overbrushing so it just catches the end of the detail. There's going to be oil washes going on these, so they're going to go back into the detail and cover over anything that looks a little bit too bright. Same things on the back of the engines here as well, just focusing towards the top of the miniature where that light catches a little bit, and then on the inside towards the bottom again where the light catches. When it comes to the spear, I'm using a little bit of sponging here. It gives you nice smooth transitions with layers rather than just painting on with a brush sometimes, and it's a lot quicker as well. And that's the whole sort of method with this paint job here. I'm seeing whether it would work as something that's repeatable for a whole army, using that underpainting method and quickly putting on those clears, and then finishing off the rest of the miniature with pretty simple techniques. And that's the whole test for this. And if I like it, it might be something that I grow and build into a little force. This is the top highlight for the metallics, and it's more of the same really, but just a slightly smaller highlight. So very standard layering, just the odd little neat line here or there on the tops of this strap now, and the buckle thing that's in the middle. I don't know what that's called, never even really thought about it. And then when we get to the spear as well, I'll just be doing a little bit of sponging just to give it a little bit of highlight right at the end. Because it's Sons of Horus and because of this green, I wanted a nice, rich, desaturated gold, almost an old gold effect. There's loads of great colours out there will do this. All the metallics I'm using in this video from P3, which I've been using quite a lot at the moment, and I really like. They're very smooth and very glossy when they go on, actually. It gives you real shine, which is very handy if you dull them down afterwards with a lot of oils and things. They still maintain enough of that punch showing through. But anyway, that's not a review of P3 paints. So I'm just adding a little bit of gold trim. There's a little bit towards the front of the pack and then around the edges of the shoulder pads. Other than that, I'm not doing any more on the miniature. We move on to that second highlight. I'm only using 2 colours for the goals just to make it really pop and stand out where the light's hitting at the top of those, and then a couple of little patches on the sides of the shoulder pads as well, just to, again, give it a bit of variation, make it stand out a little bit more and give it that little bit more shine. So really simple highlights with a mid-grey, just picking up some of the texture on the leather areas that I've picked out on the spear, on the lance there, and then a couple of patches just on those sort of rubber areas where the armour plates join, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on. Now it's time for a little bit of gloss varnish to protect it and seal it all and provide the base for adding the transfers. Just adding a couple on each shoulder pad, one on the knee and a little bit on the pack as well. I've got a video on adding transfers. I'll try to remember to pop a little link in now, so I'm not going to take you through that in this video and make it any longer than it needs to be. Once that is dry, I do add another layer of gloss to seal them in, and once that's dry, now I'm on to oil washes. I've got a sepia wash here and a brown wash. I'm lazy, I'm using ready mixed ones. I quite like these. This is from Scale 75, and you can generally still pick these up even though some of their paints are getting harder and harder to get. The sepia tone I'm keeping just on the weapon. I don't want it to look too dull and muddy. I'm also using it on the gold areas and on the base as well, on the basing texture. And then the darker colour, the mud is the name that they give it, I will be using that on all of the green armour essentially. And I give it pretty much an all over oil wash. It's well sealed and protected by all of that oil, and I want to just sort of dull it down a little bit. I'll wipe it off and remove it from all the flat surfaces as it is anyway. I'm not being too crazy with slopping it everywhere, but I am making sure that it goes in all of the recesses, and if a bit runs down on the flat panels, that's absolutely fine, because I will be taking it back off again in a moment. In the weather we have in the UK at the moment, it was touch dry in about 20 minutes in the garden, just tacky underneath, and at this stage I find it really nice that you can kind of wipe it off with a bit of sponge. It leaves it in the recesses but takes it off the flat surfaces. So that's what I'm doing here. You can use a little bit of Artist White Spirit. I'm using the AK fast drying thinner just with an old brush as well, just to clean up in certain areas, but essentially I want to leave all of that dirty brown oil paint in all of the recesses so it looks nice and shaded, but also looks grim and dirty and suitably Horus Heresy. Then it's a matte varnish after that to take away some of the shine. I've been quite deliberate with it, trying to keep it in the centre of the panels and not get it on too much of the metallics. I don't want to dull those down. If you keep the PSI low enough and the matte varnish thin enough, you can get quite a bit of control over that. At least with this AK varnish, it's pretty good. I'm just running around making sure I take away those shines, and then it's a kind of finishing touches really. A little bit of dry brushing just on the edges of some of the panels. I don't like to do edge highlighting on this style of paint job. So I'm just using the brightest silver paint I have with very little on my brush to give the effect of paint wearing away on the edges of armour plates. You have to be very careful that you don't get it streaky marks all over the sort of curved or flat areas of the miniature. You've got far too much paint on if you're doing that. So I'm really just trying to catch the edges of certain plates, and then in places where I can't get there with the brush, I am just using a regular sort of edge of my brush to pick out some little areas. We're getting quite close to the end now. I'm picking out the lenses, or little dots in the lenses with white, ready for something to go over the top in a moment. And I'm using another one of those clears just to add a little bit of electrical glow on the edge of the weapon here, or in the center around the little sort of the spark part, the part that sort of gives it the power, and then going back with that same bright silver paint again just to recapture the edges of that blade after doing that. Definitely recommend those clears, by the way, if I haven't said so already enough times. And then using a little bit of Soulstone Red just to paint in on the lenses with the underpainting of those little white lines up. They look really, really good, really effective way of doing it on the quick, so to speak. Some basing stuff I'm not going to go into the details of how I do my basing here. I've got a video on that. I'll try and remember to pop a link in to that as well. But before we know it, we're painting the base rim black, and he's all done. And I'm pretty happy with testing the concept there. I could do those relatively quickly. I think he looks pretty striking. I think that green does the job. Definitely screams Sons of Horus to me. Let me know if you don't think that's the case, but it feels like I said at the beginning, somewhere in between that more sort of minty blue effect that you get going on, and also that darker sea green effect as well. And I quite like that. I'm really tempted now, and it is always the way when you paint a miniature that comes out well. I'm always tempted to go back and turn it into a whole army. That does mean doing an awful lot of other painting, so maybe I'll just do a small skirmishy style force of them rather than the whole lot. Too many projects. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you as always to Games Workshop for sending me the box early. It's always cool to get things early and get to try out and paint the new miniatures, and it was really fun that it coincided with some paints I was testing this week, and I was able to use those new paints for a scheme on this miniature as well. So I hope you enjoyed the painting side of the video. Let me know in the comments below any thoughts you have. You're going to be picking up this box yourself. Do you like the new Mark IV? Do you prefer the old Mark IV? Do you prefer the old Mark IV? Always fun to hear about your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what I do on the channel, dropping those comments and giving the video a like really helps loads and loads. If you want to help me even more, please do check out my Patreon. It is the very best way you can support me to keep making a wide range of content on the channel. I want to produce videos 3-4 times a week. At the moment it's more like 2 times a week. I really like to do more, and the financial support really helps me do that. So thank you to all my existing patrons. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.